Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. On behalf of the Fundraising Circle, I am really excited to kick off our community fundraising event tonight with this Dharma talk from Lama Rod. And to give us a little bit of background, I'm going to invite Lisa to the screen, who will tell us a bit about how we came to be here today.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Nicole. My name is Lisa. I am part of the Fundraising Circle. And we are putting on this series of events related to money. And it came about, the Fundraising Circle started a few months ago. A call was put out to the Bhumi Sparsha community at large for anybody interested in participating in the creation of the Fundraising Circle. So a few of us volunteered, and we began having conversations about how to make Bhumi Sparsha financially sustainable. And some of the stuff that came up in that conversation was recognizing that some current models of fundraising are very harmful and reproduce the power dynamics of capitalism. And so we were trying to brainstorm on ways to raise funds in a sustainable way that would be in alignment with our values. And of course, the first step is articulating our values as an organization and financial resources. And we're still in the process of doing that. It's a very large conversation. And one idea we came up with in the meantime was creating a community fundraising drive, where as an organization in a community, we have financial needs. And if you go to the Open Collective website, you can see a list of some of our expenses, because one of the values is transparency. And so to ask the community for what we need and give the community an opportunity to support us, and also be held accountable to the community that is supporting us. And we also saw an opportunity to create a series of events that would invite us all to engage individually as we engage as an organization, allow each of us to individually engage in what it means to support the community, to explore how we feel about our money and our financial resources and our capacity. So we created a series of events. This September 1st is the kickoff to our month-long community fundraising drive, and you'll be hearing of this event is the kickoff event, and there will be 3 other events taking place throughout the month of September and October, the beginning of October. And I just want to make a quick acknowledgement about accessibility in Crowdcast. Unlike Zoom, Crowdcast does not have automatic closed captioning, and that is a huge gap that we are not able to fill at this time. If you do have Google Chrome, there is a way to automatically set up captioning, and I'm gonna drop the link to the directions in the chat. This event is recorded, and so you will also be able to watch it at your leisure. And if a transcription of the event would be helpful to you, reach out to us at info@boomisparsha.org, and we can send you a transcription. And with that, I pass it on. Or Nicole, was there anything else you wanted to add?
You covered it so well. Just a couple of things in case it's your first time with Crowdcast. You can see the chat to the right. We really encourage you to participate. And I just want you to know that this is recorded, including the chat, and including if you look at the bottom of your window, there's an ask a question. All that gets recorded, which is great because you can look at it later, but it also means this isn't a confidential space. So just a heads up on that if it's your first time here. I'm also going to drop a message in the chat to acknowledge sort of like our community guidelines. As Boomi Sparsha, when we hold more intimate spaces, we have a much more robust community guidelines. Tonight, I want to invite us all to be mindful of one particular piece of it, which is self-focus. So when you're in the chat or you're asking questions, like it's really generous and helpful if we use I statements, speak about our experiences from our perspective and not on behalf of a whole group or expressing assumptions about others, and just again, want to thank you all for being here. I'll drop a message in the chat, like I said, but I'd like to welcome Lama Rod to the screen now for our Dharma talk. So thank you so much.
Okay, there we go. Hello, everyone. I want to first start off by appreciating and offering my appreciation to the fundraising circle for this really important labor, and just for just the labor of so many people from across the community stepping up and offering what they can to the community. This is like such important work right now, and it's important for us as our community is growing. So again, thank you so much to the whole committee and for Nicole and Lisa and so forth, for the leaders of the circle as well. Thank you so much. I am teaching from and living on the sacred ancestral land of the Creek and the Muskogee and Cherokee peoples. Also the ancestral land of my enslaved ancestors, on the land we call Atlanta Georgia. Um, and I am being supported by the blessings of the Golden Girls tonight. You know, one of my many Golden Girls shirts. Actually, I got this last year on my birthday. But anyway, that's not the point of the talk tonight. Um, so yeah, I'm really excited to be offering just some reflections around generosity and around money for the community as we begin to kind of kick off this important work. Um, there's so many places that I want to start, and I have so many kind of stories to tell. Um, I guess I want to start with an early lesson around generosity and dharma. Um, so, at the very beginning of my practice, or kind of a little ways into it, I had started practicing, and I was with the Dzogchen Foundation. That was Surya Das, um, back during those times, the early 2000s, and I wasn't really that excited about practice. I really wasn't that interested. I was intellectually interested in Dharma. I was really struggling to maintain a practice. And I met I would say, a Christian healer, energy worker who lived in my neighborhood. And I met this healer through a friend of mine. And we began to work together. And we began to do energy work, and we began to do meditation work together. And I worked and studied very closely with this healer for about 6 or 7 months, I would say. And I did a lot of like really intense work with them. And by the end of that first round of work, I really found myself investing really heavily, primarily in my meditation practice. I hadn't quite stepped into becoming a Buddhist, but I was really into meditation and mindfulness particularly. But I share this story because early on in that relationship, this healer, really taught me about generosity and balance, right? And what I mean by that was that she taught me that something is owed when we become recipients of profound, spiritual wisdom. Um, and it's not that, you know, it's not about people making a living. It's something actually much more sacred than that, right? And what she taught me was that you can't you can't keep consuming things without thinking about how to return something back to the source, of those resources, right? The source of those teachings. And she challenged me. She challenged me even as a person who had no money. Back then I was just like poor. I was a poor activist, and that's what I did all day. We were organizing and acting up, and and feeding people and clothing, just like we were like helping people as much as we can in the community that I lived in. So I was just doing that, and that wasn't, we got room and board, but no, no paycheck or salary. And so I had no money, but what this healer taught me was that like it's important, even if you have no money, to think about um, how to give back, how to replenish the source of those teachings. Be it a person, be it a community. And I had to do all kinds of stuff to offer back to her. Nothing illegal, right? But I had to like push myself through a lot of discomfort to really begin to understand that, you know, um, I had an ethical responsibility in a way to do what I can to offer back to this healer so that that healer could then continue to offer to others like me. You know, there's always this balance that's happening, you know, between being the recipient of teachings and that source, wherever that teaching is coming from, be it a person, community, or what have you. You know, that we have to be very sensitive to, because one of the things that we're struggling with as a world is overconsumption, right? And what this kind of generosity is asking us to do, to think about, is, you know, how can we develop this kind of reciprocal relationship, right? As I am being offered to, how can I offer back? You know, and within the Buddhist sense, we're offering back because we want the teachings, the wisdom, the dharma to be accessible to people. And it's really hard to make dharma accessible without resources. You know, we can look at the history of dharma in, you know, Asian countries, you know, over the past, you know, 1,000+ years, 2,000 years perhaps. And you can see that cultures and communities supported the dharma. They supported monastics. They supported, you know, monasteries, right? They supported the teachers, right? That was the culture, right, to support, you know. And even coming, you know, for, you know, those of you who grew up maybe in Catholicism, for instance, this is similar culture, right? You know, that we're here to support the monastic community because the monastic community holds the depth of practice for a tradition, you know. And so for Buddhism, our monastic culture and the history and roots of our monastic culture are the monastic culture and the monastic institutions are responsible for Dharma being still around today because they held, protected, cared for, you know, and taught, you know, by having, well, they taught, and that teaching was accessible because the communities around them offered the basic resources back to these individuals and institutions, right? So that's like really important to kind of understand, is that when we talk about, or actually the first lesson I learned in generosity was about really becoming an agent that allows Dharma to continue to be accessible by taking care of communities, taking care of individuals, right? You know, we can even say taking care of the material things like books and scriptures and so forth. Like everything has to be cared for. And then the question that we have is like, what can I offer? You know. So I'm going to tell another story from my early practice. So when I really got into Dharma and was really, really practicing, you know, I started going to intensive retreats, like 10-day retreats, you know, and again, you know, I didn't have any money, right? And so for those of us who have been on these intensive retreats, you know, you can pay, you know, usually average, you know, between, you know, easily $1,000, right? I would just say that easily $1,000, sometimes less, but easily $1,000. I didn't have any of that when I was starting going to these intensive retreats, you know, and of course I had to travel and fly all over the place. I didn't have any money, right? And one of the things that I am so deeply grateful for was how my first sangha, the Dzogchen Foundation, made it possible for me to come on retreats by just severely reducing, you know, the retreat fee for me, right? Now, I want to specifically name one person in particular. This person, his name is John Dean, and John was the retreat manager back then for the Dzogchen Foundation. And he really, through his generosity, right, made it possible for me and others, right, to come on to retreats, and just pay what we could, which was very little, which was maybe $150, $200, at most, right? And I have, like, one of the reasons I'm here now, in this position was because of the generosity, of John, and, of course, of others as well. And I've taken that, now, being, whatever it is that I am, like Lama Rod, right? Being Lama Rod now, I reflect often on those generosities that were offered to me, because, and even my 3-year retreats, which is not free. I think there's a misconception that 3-year retreat is free. It's not free, but it's pretty reasonable, though. I would say extremely reasonable to do in terms of money. But even my 3-year retreat, everything was completely paid for, some by friends, some by family, but the rest was taken care of by a donor. And this was, over $20,000. So, like, I am nothing but the recipient of generosity in the world of dharma, and so I think this is such an important thing for me to be expressing now, as we begin this work of fundraising, is that if we want to see the community of dharma and teaching, that is, really working to meet the needs of all the members, we have to start thinking about how we can offer to the community, and what those resources are that we can offer. In Buddhism particularly, we see this in Theravada Buddhism or early Buddhism. We see the teachings around the paramitas, the perfections, or in Tibetan Buddhism, we would translate it as the boundless qualities. And there's this list of boundless, just 4 boundless qualities, but one of those is generosity. And so using more of like the Theravadan translation, we'd say the perfection of generosity. And what does that mean? In terms of the perfection of generosity, it really means that it's not about being perfect at generosity. It's coming to this place of understanding that generosity is just a natural state that we should be in, that we should be willing to be of help, but to be of help in a way that's appropriate for us, right? In a way that's boundaried. So this perfection of generosity doesn't mean that, like, we're just saying yes to everything, right? Because the shadow side of generosity can actually be violence and manipulation, or maybe violence in the form of manipulation, because generosity can be something we can weaponize, right? What's an example? Well, here's an example. I'm rich, I give a bunch of money away, and therefore I have lots of influence. And I can influence people and institutions to have things go my way in certain situations because I'm really generous with my money. Now that's a hypothetical because I'm not rich, but I'm saying I've seen this over and over again when people have a lot of financial resources and they're very generous with it. There's a kind of entitlement that comes with that kind of expression of generosity, and that's not the perfection of generosity. So when we talk about the perfection of generosity, it's a decentering of the sense of self in giving. So decenter, not the erasure, not the pushing away into the periphery. I'm saying a decenter. So if this is our ego, right? If this is our ego here, this right here, oh, this is the ego. This is the ego, this little pointing finger. This is the ego. So this is the center, right? So what we're saying is that we're not trying to like just push the sense of self out the picture. What we're saying in decentering is that we just want just like the sense of self to be pushed to the side. Like it's still in this area of awareness. I'm still connected. But then we begin to bring in like other experiences. We begin to bring in the needs of others and contemplations of the needs of others, our communities, and so forth, right? So here's me, right? I haven't forgotten what I need, but I'm now beginning to consider the needs of others. So as I'm considering the needs of others, I'm still holding my needs in balance. So when we talk about coming into this perfection of generosity, what we're really talking about is that how can everyone get what they need to be well, including myself, right? Because I'm not trying to be a martyr. I have needs that should be met and have to be met, right? So as I am trying to figure out generosity, that I'm never forgetting that I also need things as well to be well. So there's a relationship between what I need and what others need, and again, that maintains a balance. So again, it's not about me just like giving away everything that I have, and just like having nothing, no basic resources, no food, no clothing. It's not about that. It's about rather understanding that it's important that everyone's needs are met, including mine, right? And to also do the work of understanding what is in access or in abundance. So another way of saying that is like, what do I have that I'm not using that should be offered? And that's a really actually huge part of my practice, around particularly material things. Like I don't like having a lot of stuff, so if I have stuff, I want to give it away. I want to donate it, or I want to give it to friends, right? Doing that contemplation constantly, like what is it that I don't need that I'm hanging on to, and how can I offer that? And that can be money as well. So I want to take a break from that and really get into more of how we talk about the kinds of generosity, perhaps in Vajrayana, right? And so there are 3 kinds of generosity that my teacher used to teach to us. And the first kind of generosity is the generosity of dharma, of offering dharma. So when we're thinking about practicing generosity or being generous, we say that, well, dharma, is like the thing that I want to offer. I want to offer the teachings. And within like, a Buddhist, paradigm, offering the dharma is the most generous kind of offering that you can make, right? Because the dharma is about liberation from samsara. It's about enlightenment, right? And it is believed that it takes a lot of merit, a lot of good karma to be able to offer teachings to dharma to other folks, right? So that's the first level of generosity. Then another level of generosity is the generosity of material resources, right? So the generosity, the giving of things that people need to be well, to survive. So offering food, clothing, medicine, housing. I would even expand that to say that like it's also about offering justice and accountability too as an act of generosity, as well. So offering basic resources, basic necessities, which and including money, right? Which I'll get into money in just a minute. The material resources includes money, right? And so the third kind of generosity is called the generosity of fearlessness. And this has, I think, a couple different interpretations, but from my practice, the offering of fearlessness is really the offering of confidence and support to people. It's the offering of protection to folks. It's saying that, like, it's the offering of space for folks, you know. Um, it's standing up for people. It's being in solidarity with folks. That's the offering of fearlessness, you know. And what we're taught in the tradition is that we should be practicing these generosities all together. That if we can offer dharma, we offer dharma. If we can offer material resources, we offer material resources. If we can also offer fearlessness, solidarity, we should be offering that. And this expression of generosity comes from love. And for me, love is, it's about it's about people being free and happy. You know? Like, it's coming from the basic aspiration that beings should be safe and not recipients of violence, that every being should have what they need to be well. But it's love for others, also love for ourselves, where we say, well, what are the ways in which maybe I'm over consuming and could be offering the things that I don't need off, to others, around me. And so when we think about generosity, I think sometimes a lot of fear that comes up, like the fear that maybe the thing that I give away I'm going to need, eventually, or the fear that I just don't have enough, I just don't have enough to offer. I don't know enough dharma, or I don't have enough material resources to offer. Or I'm not, or I'm afraid. How can I offer fearlessness and solidarity when I'm just like terrified? So these are all, these are all really legitimate, important things for us to contemplate in our practice in terms of the obstacles of generosity. But for me, I would say that like so much of my generosity emerges from the fact that I have been the recipient of so much generosity. This is why the gratitude practice is so important, which we may do like a short gratitude practice, if I can just stop talking at some point. But I have I have some more important stuff to share. But for me, it's always every day thinking about all the ways in which I am being cared for and all the ways I have been cared for. All the ways I was being cared for before I was even born, right? All that generosity, because we only survive through generosity. And that's important to always contemplate in our practice. Again, so what influences me to give is to understand that I'm always being offered too. And the more I get into that generosity, the more I step into that flow of opening and offering, the more I feel actually restored and resourced. That generosity actually becomes a practice of self-care and restoration. And that's something that you can begin to explore in your own practice. How does giving restore me, benefit me? And not just the kind of giving where we get recognition from, but just the offering over and over again. Like, what does that do for me? How does generosity become an expression of compassion, right? So love, if we want to get precise, love is like traditionally the wish for people to be happy and safe. Compassion is the wish for people to get free, right? Which for me is almost the same thing. And it may be the same thing in a forthcoming book of mine. But, I don't want to get into that right now. But simply to say that generosity is a way that we take care of people and help people to get free as well. You know. So I want to talk a little bit about this particular resource of money. Um, and this first healer spiritual teacher that I had said something to me that was really fascinating, that has stayed with me for these years. She said, she said one day, um, money comes to evil, and evil comes to money. And I was so struck by that statement, but it's launched this kind of reflection for me. It's like, okay, you know, and of course, right now, I have very different views around what's evil and not evil, but you know, but the process that I went to, just really trying to absorb that wisdom early on in my practice, was really helping me to understand the ways in which I was just so deeply attached to money myself, and the things that I would do for money. Again, it wasn't anything illegal necessarily, but there's just the ways in which I value money over relationships, right? Which is the investment in capitalism, right? You know, and the ways in which that created harm. And I think we see that pretty well now, particularly the system of capitalism and how that has a direct impact on everything, especially the climate and the earth, right? Um, and that began, it moved from, money and evil to, for me, a contemplation around how I had to stop looking towards financial resources to do the work that I was called to do. So another way of saying that was that I had to stop relying on money to do the work, right? That I had to reorient myself to say that I'm just going to start the work, and I'm going to trust that the resources like money, will follow me and support me, and I just kind of reoriented around that, and I just started, I went into a 3-year retreat without any money. I hadn't even paid for a 3-year retreat, but I was sitting through a retreat, and I just kind of prayed, and I said that I'm doing something really important. I know that the financial resources will emerge, and it did, and for me personally, continues to do so. But that only happens because I put the work first, right? And if the work is good and virtuous and ethical, then the resources will come. But particularly if the work is really needed, the resources will arise. When I think about money now, as I move into this part of my life, I really take an indigenous perspective around money, which is that money is energy. Wealth is energy. These resources are energy that we spread around, right, in order to take care of people, to take care of places, institutions, or whatever that we care about. It just becomes energy, right? And it's not even energy that I have a lot of agency over, um, because money, the nature of money, what is money? It's just this thing that we're putting meaning to, right? But that meaning can be disrupted at any time, so this kind of indigenous framework is that what this my money, my wealth is just energy that I have to influence things, and I want to influence things for the better. And I want to be in right relationship to sources of liberation and teaching. So the things, whatever I'm getting to feel this sense of freedom, happiness, spaciousness, wherever it may be, wherever I'm getting that from, I want to offer it back to that source because I want to make sure that source continues to offer. You know? And so becoming a teacher after all of that, after getting out of retreat and being the recipient of so much generosity, I was just like, I'm just going to teach, right? I'm just going to teach and see what happens in terms of money, and for the first few years, it was, really tough. I went into a lot of debts, um, I was going without certain resources that I needed. Um, and 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 then over the years, what I began to understand was that when I struggled to meet basic needs, it made it harder for me to show up and to offer dharma to people, to the communities that were asking me, because I spent a lot of energy worrying about all the stuff that I didn't have and needed to have, like healthcare and transportation, basic things like that really made it difficult for me to offer dharma. And so over the years, of course, I've been able to acquire resources from communities, from students, and from folks like you to offer basic resources so I can continue to do what I do. So I can only show up in the way that I show up in the world because there are people who are helping me do that now, people who are, paying for courses and buying my books and, signing up for retreats and so forth. Or offering dana, dana means generosity to me. So I don't do this to get rich, but I do want to be cared for through the expression of these generosities, right? Financial generosity being one of those, but also, the ways in which I'm offered solidarity and offered other resources like food and, or space or volunteer labor hours, whatever it may be, these things help us to do the work of offering of dharma. And so lastly, this really brings me back into the focus of our work right now, our campaign. I think the Bhumi Sparsha is in this space of being shaped by the aspirations of everyone that comes, by all of us. We all have these aspirations. We come into the community, our aspirations begin to shape the community. And these aspirations, for a lot of us, are responding to the situations that many of us have escaped from. Many of us have left spiritual organizations. There was just a lot of violence happening, including, this has also been my situation as well, leaving these communities and wanting to be a part of something different, right? And doing what we, in terms of Bhumi Sparsha, doing what we did at the beginning, which was just starting, and doing and gathering and drawing people, But now we enter into this next stage of the community where there has to be a foundation and an infrastructure, where we actually have to start practicing, particularly a kind of financial generosity, supporting folks who we want, to take on and for the community to be their primary responsibility, or one of their responsibilities, but where we're actually offering resources that sustains their capacity to offer to the community. So again, it's shifting energy, right? Shifting energy into places where we need foundation and stability, And so this fundraising campaign is what we're trying to do here, because we have There are so many people who are offering well, they're offering financial resources, but a lot of you are offering a lot of volunteer hours, and I really want people to be supported, you know, as much as possible, you know. Um, and so we have to start thinking about, which we have, start thinking about how do we financially support the community, but also bringing in all the other expressions of generosity as well, you know. And this is, Bhumi Sparsha has been something that I've been financially very generous with, over the years, as some of you may know, um, because I was raised in the black church, and my mother, as some of you know, and you would know if you read my books, right? You know, um, a side story here, and I promise you it won't take but a minute. So I was like at a very small family gathering the week before last, and I have this aunt who was asking me all these questions. I just kind of looked at her and said, "You would know the answer to these questions if you read my books." you know. Anyway, that's just a side thing. Coming back to the main point, right? You know. Yeah, I mean, and growing up in church, like we were taught to tithe, right? Tithing meant, for the most part, you offer 10% of your income back to the church. And this is something my mother, even when she was a minister and a pastor, I mean, she still is a minister and a pastor, but she takes that really seriously, even as the pastor. Like, she believes that she too has to offer tithe back 10% of her earnings, her income, back to the church, even as the minister. And that's something that, like, I also take seriously as well. It's like I'm always asking myself, how can I offer generosity to the sangha? And I want to offer more generosity to the sangha, in terms of everything, teaching, fearlessness, and resources. So this is the question that I, kind of leave with you all too. So I'm gonna get into at least 10 minutes of questions, right? This is the thing that I want to kind of leave with you is like, what are you willing to offer to something that is really trying to become something that we all need right now? And knowing that nothing is sustainable without generosity, you know. And particularly for those of us who really get a lot out of the teachings that happen here, like, how can we really start thinking about how to offer, back to this community to help the community grow, or at least to help the community be sustainable. Like, growth isn't actually my objective, but like, how can we sustain what's already happening right now with the community? And again, that comes from love, that comes from compassion, that comes from knowing and understanding that whatever we get that's liberatory, we know that there's a debt owed. You know. I'll finish up by saying this. I have, I have a difficult relationship with my home institution, with my home monastery, and I'm, not connected anymore. And that's been something that I've been grieving for several years now. Is that loss of home, that loss of community, um, particularly community that I thought would always be my home. I was told it would always be my home, but grieving that, but also grieving a relationship with my teacher, with Lama Rod Rinpoche, who, you know, um, I've written about and talked about and gone through it with people over and over. But when I think about my teacher and my home institution, and yes, I have these direct criticisms of harm, but I also have these really strong experiences of just profound generosity that, again, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the monastery, for my teacher. You know, that was through it was through the kindness of the monastery, through Northern Rinpoche. You know, it was just through that kindness that saved me and brought me into whatever it is that I'm into, right? You know, and that's something regardless of how I may be further criticizing them in the next book. Regardless of that, I always come back to the generosity that my life was saved because of the generosity that they offered to me. You know, and as we know from our teachings, is that, you know, the good and the bad rise together. And when the good and the bad come together, you know that you have the facts of life. Yes, I did go there. So I want to just kind of transition into the questions. So we have a question box. So I just want to take, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on questions, but you know, any question that you have, I'll try to get to. So in the question box, it says from Lisa, growing up in a culture where many of us are taught to hoard money, how do I work or suggest others work with that conditioning and determining how much we need and how much we can share? Now, yeah, I think that's a really good question. You know, and you know, I was kind of raised. It was interesting. I wasn't really raised in that kind of hoarding tradition because being raised in a small Black Southern community, we just kind of gave, you know, like you know, we were just always offering to each other, be it money, be it food, be it housing, you know. So I kind of came up with this kind of perspective that like, oh, like whatever I have can be offered away, you know, and that kind of shaped my path into activism and so forth. But I think in general, yeah, I think a lot of folks, you know, have this, like we have a poverty mentality. You know, in meditation we call it the poverty mind, but like this kind of mentality that like, and this is actually created by capitalism where like we just never have enough. Like capitalism is driven by this perception that there's never enough, so you have to keep producing. You know, you have to keep producing, right? And while those who own capital actually benefit from that overproduction, you know, and for those of us like me who don't own capital, like we're the ones who are perpetually drained from that. And so I would say that like we have to do some work with around undoing around, well, patriarchy is definitely a part of this, but undoing capitalism and the way capitalism has influenced the way we think about resources. That resources are limited, but actually resources are quite plentiful, right? And that our overconsumption and hoarding of resources actually comes from this experience of suffering, you know, because we're trying to acquire resources to somehow do something with the suffering, to heal the suffering, to cover up the suffering, you know, and that's not the case. The only thing that can tend to the suffering is our practice, is awareness, is compassion. And on a more logistic scale, like you do your budget, like you know, you put your budget together, and you know, and for me, even with me, it's like, okay, I always know how much I have to give away to offer. And for me, at this point in my dharma life, you know, I can be more generous than I have in the past, but I feel, you know, resourced enough to do that, you know. For me, there's joy in giving and generosity. It's joy in like treating people for dinner or for food. It's joy in buying stuff for people. It's joy in like making, you know, I like to make cakes and everything. So it's joy in baking and offering baked goods to people. It's joy in offering dharma, but I'm talking about more like material resources. It's joy in giving things away. Because I'm invested in people being happy and resource. Um, so that's what I would say. The conditioning, yeah. Like we have to determine what we can really give away. Like we have to determine what you need, right? And then whatever's left over, you offer it. Okay, let me move to this next question. I'm curious about the term dana because I'm relatively new to the practice. Can you talk a bit about the difference between dana and a donation to Bhumi Sparsha? Also, is dana specifically money, or is the solidarity through fearlessness of dana too? Yes, so dana means generosity. Dana is the Pali word for generosity. And so generosity again is any generosity that I want, talk about. But when we use dana in like Buddhist community sangha terms, we're always talking about money. And so dana and donation are really the same. So you offer dana to Bhumi Sparsha, you offer dana to dana is donation, right? So you're offering dana, you're offering generosity, as a form of as an expression of dana. Also, is dana specifically money? Okay, and is solidarity through fearlessness? Yes, and solidarity through fearlessness is dana as well. Yeah, because that fearlessness, the offering of fearlessness, is actually emotional labor that we do for others, but it's the emotional labor that we've had to do for ourselves. Like I can't offer fearlessness. Like I just can't show up and be like, okay, you're gonna be all right. We're gonna get through this. If I haven't done that level of work for myself, because if I haven't done that for myself, all you're gonna get is like fear, doubt, anxiety, and a lot of people do that. Unfortunately, like people kind of try to show up to help people, and what they're doing is just kind of showing up and bringing their own fear to the situation. So that, yeah, thank you, Nicole. That's a really good question. We don't really, I don't think we necessarily have the language of dana, and I would prefer actually we don't use that term in Bhumi Sparsha. And that's just an opinion, But I think that we want to, I think donation is fine. Use as a term because I think it's clear. I think that, people come in and like, oh, what's dana, but what we're saying is like donation, and there can be other ways to talk about other kinds of generosity. Like volunteering, or what have you, right? So when we talk about donation, we're talking about donation money. We're talking about money. So I have like maybe about a minute or so left, but I've never been anyone hung up around money. Like I either have it or I don't. Like, nor have I really kind of fallen into this place of how, particularly in a capitalist system where capital begins to define you. The means of capital. Well, I'll be specific. Material resources is, how your material resources defines you. I've just never been into that. Like I've definitely, I definitely grew up having shame around being poor. But I'm not ashamed of that anymore, But even though I didn't have that many material resources, I still was like into talking about money for some reason. So I'm the one who comes to the party who just point blank asks everyone how much they make. you know? Um, and often I'm told that's offensive for people, but Um, so these are the things that we need. It's like the conversation is these are the things that we need to support the community to fulfill our aspirations, right? These are the material things that we need, and so let's just talk about that, you know. And if I have it, I offer it. And when I do offer something, I don't really think about it afterwards. Like when I decide to offer something, be it money or something, I just give it. I say, you know what? Even if someone is asking for a loan, like I've had friends who will be like, I want a loan. I just need, you to loan me some money. And I just don't even do that. Like I just give it, and like if you pay it back, fine. Like if you don't, fine. But like for me, it helps to cut through resentments. If up front I just say, I'm offering this, if I get it back, fine. If I don't, fine. But my intention is to offer you this thing as a gift. Even if you think you're gonna pay it back, it's still a gift. You So yeah, that's what I would say about some of this. And the times, and we are, it's important to point out that we are in financial disruption. A lot of us, are underemployed and under resourced, right? And so even with us, like it's about being smart and saying, if I don't have it to give, I don't give it. But like also, there is something really meaningful about symbolic gestures as well. I may only have like 50 cents to give, but that's what I'm going to give, and it's okay. I think sometimes we get into this thing where it's like, well, I have to give a certain amount. No, give what you have. You know, this is why I have to give, and that's what I want to offer. Okay. I think I will end there for folks. Um, and I think that Nicole comes back or Lisa comes back. We'll see. It'll be a surprise. There we go.
Thank you so much, Lama Rod. I hear an echo. I apologize on your end. So just wanted to share that the fundraising circle. Okay, I'm gonna go off. You take over, Lisa. Thanks everyone. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, my.
Okay. Oh, Nicole, do you want back on? I think maybe that would fix it. That fixed it.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted to share, we have a couple of closing announcements and we'll be out of here in a couple minutes. So I just want to share that the fundraising circle put together a very short survey. It's a couple questions because we're not in every corner of the Sangha every single day. And we want like your input on what we're doing with this drive and what we're doing with our events, especially the final event. It's not that we don't know what we're doing. It's that we want your help in planning what it is. So I'm just going to drop a link in the chat to that survey. If you have some time over the next week to do that, we would greatly appreciate it. So I'll drop that link in, and then Lisa's got a couple things to share as well.
I was unmuted. Okay, I made a list. Thank you so much, Lama Rod. And I do want to put in another plug for Lama Justin is giving a talk on September 8th, but then the last two events are smaller, more intimate events where we'll get to engage with each other and just get to go a lot more deeper, which I'm excited about, into our own practice around money and what comes up for us. So I want to plug that. And then on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a monthly sustaining gift button. If you feel like you have the capacity right now and you have an amount that feels clear to you that you want to give, you can click on that button. And if not, you can click on the link that we'll put in the chat that will take you to our Open Collective page. And I also want to make a plug for, on the page, you'll see the button, the donate button on the top. But if you scroll down, there's about info and there's FAQs. So it gives you more context for why we're $7 a month in sustaining donation. So if you have the capacity to give a monthly sustaining donation, that goes a long way to making us financially sustainable. Of course, one-time amounts are appreciated. And also we're aiming for $7,500 a month. And also just read about the About section, and you can look at the FAQs if you want to engage more in determining what feels like a generous and appropriate amount for you. And yeah, you will be hearing a lot more from us in the coming month. You'll be getting emails, people will be making announcements at events. And if you feel excited about our community fundraising drive and you want to make announcements in any events you go to, we encourage you to do that. I think that is all I have for now.
So Lama Rod, if you want to close us out, that's all we have for you for tonight.
Okay. Okay. Great. I was looking for the mute button. Yeah. So I want to thank everyone again, particularly the fundraising circle, for this labor and this act of generosity. You know, and I really encourage all of us to really start taking this seriously. This is something I'm also taking seriously as well. I am also will be signing up to offer a monthly contribution, you know, tithing, also back to the sangha as well. Okay, so if there's nothing left, I feel like I've been on like a PBS fundraising kind of like thing. Where it's like, if you want to continue seeing programs like the one you've just been seeing, you know, which was Lama Rod Talking Shit, then, you know, please consider becoming a monthly member. And in return, we'll send you a t-shirt. But actually, no, for real, we'll just send you like a thank you letter. And congratulations. So we'll have t-shirts one day. So just to close this out, I want to close this out by inviting you just to briefly reflect on something that you're grateful for in Bhumi Sparsha. You know, something that you're grateful for and feel deeply appreciative for. And allowing that experience of generosity to really begin to expand, to grow, to deepen in the body and in the mind. I invite you to imagine that this energy of generosity becomes like a bright, white, warm light that begins to radiate from your body. And this energy of gratitude begins to radiate out into the world, filling the world around you, including the earth, with this energy of gratitude, the light of gratitude. That we still live in a world where there are things to be grateful for. And letting that energy just fill up the world with its light. So we dedicate all the work, the merit, the labor of our time together, and all the work that we've been doing. We dedicate all this energy out to all beings, that all beings and all the worlds and all the times may be completely, utterly free from harm and violence, and may all beings have the resources they need to be well, happy, and safe. Thank you all so much for your practice tonight, and please continue to join us for this series.